Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Curios cast. This week, we are discussing the curious case of the Westfield Watcher.
The Westfield Watcher?
The Westfield Watcher. Have either of you heard of the Westfield Watcher?
No.
Not at all, no.
Never.
I think more commonly known as just the Watcher, rather than the Westfield Watcher. So this is a story that I first heard about.
Tom already asked a second ago off air, but we're assuming this is not Westfield Stratford.
It's not Westfield
local
Stratford,
to us.
Or Westfield White City.
or Westfield White City, or any of the other Westfields around the UK.
Westfield is a
close to
shopping centre for anyone who doesn't live in the UK, maybe lives in Uruguay or something. But this is not about shopping centres.
It's not about shopping centres, but maybe in the future we'll do a shopping centre special. So, this is a story that I first heard a few years ago, and it sounds like a creepypasta. So for those that don't know what a creepypasta is, it's like a made-up fictional story that people were sharing on. Was it 4chan that creepypastas originated on?
Probably. I know it mostly from Reddit, but that
Reddit,
is just where I grew up. So I don't know if it originated on 4chan. There is now just a creepypasta website, just creepypasta.com.
Yeah, so that's what I've seen. But
So this sounds like a creepypasta, but this is all 100% true. So everything within this case happened, and it's still a bit of a mystery. And I find it quite interesting. It's quite recent as well. It's not like some of the stuff that I've brought up in the past where it happened back in like the 50s and the 60s, and it's just word of mouth. And did that happen? Did it not? This did happen. So I'm going to get right into it. So I've written a script as well. This is probably the most prepared I've ever been for one of our episodes. So.
That's great.
So this case revolves around a couple purchasing a house in Westfield, Westfield, New Jersey. So in the US. In June 2014, Derek and Maria Broadus purchased 657 Boulevard, which was a $1.3 million colonial-style home in Westfield, New Jersey. So a substantial house.
can I just ask, sorry to butt in so early, what does colonial actually mean?
So I think it's in the US, colonial is a style of house. So they, it's got like a wraparound porch.
Does it mean like, you hear colonial about a lot of stuff though, and obviously like colonial was like colonial England. Does it mean from when Britain colonised?
I think that's where it comes from.
So they mean that old style,
like an old style house from the the colonial period.
Yeah, like as old, basically as old as America is, surely, right? Yeah. When it was colonised, and
I think that in the sense of architecture, colonial means it's got certain features. Not like Georgian.
Yeah, I was about to say like Victorian houses, they originate from the Victorian times, but obviously Victorian style houses were still built after that. So colonial.
So this is a colonial style house.
Yeah.
So it's been built in the style of, or it's got elements of a colonial home.
Right.
What that is exactly, I don't know.
Okay.
But so Westfield, New Jersey. At the time of this happening was the 30th. It was ranked as the 30th safest town in the USA, with very low crime rates and very safe neighborhoods. Obviously, very high sort of median income. Houses are $1.3 million. Or this house is $1.3 million, but that was pretty much the average for this neighborhood. And the crux of the story is this family buy this house. And as soon as they buy the house and they begin the moving process, they begin to receive strange letters in their mailbox that I'm going to talk you through. And it leads to a chain of events that prevents them from moving into the house. So when they bought the house, some renovations had to be made. So they didn't move in straight away. They began with the renovations. One day, the father, Derek, checked the mailbox. After he'd been at the house doing renovations, things like that. Checked the mailbox and he found a letter inside, which was addressed to the new neighbours.
1 second. Was it? It's not Derek Acora, is it?
It's not Derek Acora.
What's the classic thing that he
Mary loves Dick.
Mary loves Dick.
Mary loves Dick. He died, didn't he, a couple of years ago?
Did he?
I think so, yeah.
He must surely still about. Surely.
Floating around. We get him on the podcast.
Yeah, one of his mates must be chatting to him, yeah.
Didn't he speak to Michael Jackson? Or there was like a TV show where he channeled the spirit of Michael Jackson.
Fucking hell.
Like a classic Sky show. Anyway, so Derek Broadus opened his letterbox and he found a letter addressed to the new neighbours. So he thought, okay, that's a nice letter, welcome us to the neighbourhood, something like that. Mm-hmm. However, when he opened it up, he found that the letter read, and this is verbatim, "Dearest new neighbour at 657 Boulevard, allow me to welcome you to the neighbourhood. 657 Boulevard has been the subject of my family for many decades now, and as it approaches its 110th birthday, I have been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming. My grandfather watched the house in the 1920s, and my father watched in the 1960s, and it is now my time. Do you know the history of the house? Do you know what lies within the walls of 657 Boulevard? Why are you here? I will find out.
What?
I have seen already that you have flooded 657 Boulevard with contractors so that you can destroy the house as it was supposed to be. Tut, tut, tut. Bad move. You don't want to make 657 Boulevard unhappy. You have children. I have seen them. So far, I think there are 3 that I have counted. Do you need to fill the house with the young blood that I requested? All the better for me.
What?
Was your old house too small for your growing family? Or was it greed to bring me your children? Once I know their names, I will call to them and draw them to me. Who am I? There are hundreds and hundreds of cars that drive by 657 Boulevard each day. Maybe I am in one. Look at all the windows you can see from 657 Boulevard. Maybe I am in one. Look out of any of the windows in 657 Boulevard at all the people who stroll by each day. Maybe I am one. Welcome, my friends, welcome. Let the party begin. The Watcher.
Fucking that. Fuck off.
That's mad.
So you received this. They received this letter in the mailbox, which is mental. Imagine opening up your letterbox.
That. You'd just be out, wouldn't you? Because you can't just be out. It's not straightforward. You just go, fuck that, I'm out.
Yeah.
Like you just moved in.
1.3 million.
Yeah.
So they've not even moved in at this point. He's still renovating.
Oh, right. So they bought it, though. Done deal. They just ain't moved in yet.
Done deal. This was 3 days after they finalised on the house.
Wow.
So 3 days after they started, doing painting. I think they did like a revamp of a few the big rooms inside. And he found this letter. So obviously immediately he called the police. And once the police arrived, they examined the letter, but were just as bemused as Derek was, or the couple were. Obviously asked Derek if he had any enemies or knew of any reason someone would want to grief him, which he said no, he was not sure of any reason why anyone would want to have a grudge or anything like that. They checked the house. There was nothing in the house that was weird. There was no broken doors or no signs that anyone was going into the house, all that sort of stuff. So there's nothing else they could really do. They just said, just make sure you don't leave all your construction equipment around the outside of the house, just in case someone uses it to break in, could throw something through a window, that sort of stuff. And just keep all the doors and windows locked. What more can they do, really? There's not much the police can do in that situation, I guess. Still, I'd be shitting my pants.
Yeah.
That evening, the couple decided to email the owners, the former owners that they'd bought the house from, John and Andrea Woods, and they wanted to ask why they hadn't said anything about the Watcher, or whether they'd had any letters that were the same, because what wasn't mentioned in the letter that I just read out is that the Watcher said, I instructed the Woods to bring me fresh blood. So it referenced the previous owners within the letter.
So when did he say that? Did you just misread the letter? Or?
Yeah, I misread it. So it said it in the original letter, I instructed the Woods to bring me fresh blood. So they obviously were like, what the fuck? Like,
yeah.
So they emailed her, which is weird. Like, why would you email? But I guess at the time they read the letter, it was quite late at night.
Yeah.
And in the morning, Andrea Woods had replied. But she said that they'd never received any such letters in the many years that they had lived in the house until the week before they handed the keys over to the Broadus family. Andrea described the letter as odd, and it made similar mention of the Watcher's family observing the house over a period of time. But Andrea said that she and her husband had never received anything like it in the 23 years before. So they'd thrown the letter away without really giving it much thought. I guess you're moving out. So at that point, you're like, well,
fuck it. Yeah.
So, yeah, at this point, they go to the police with Andrea Woods, with the former owner, to say that this happened before. We haven't got the original letter. What can we do? At which point they were told, there's not much we can do. Just don't mention the letters to any of your neighbours, because at the moment, everyone's a suspect. Like, every one of your new neighbours is potentially the watcher. So you just can't speak to anyone about it. So imagine moving into this neighbourhood. You've spent $1.3 million on a house, and you're like, any one of my neighbours could be a lunatic.
This psychopath.
Yeah. It's just crazy. So, over the next week, because they're still having work done on it, so they were having contractors come in, like painters, decorators, all sorts of stuff for the garden. So the garden was quite overgrown.
They must have had neighbours come round, like they do. Doesn't happen around here. I don't know if it happens. It seems to only happen in American shows. But like when someone moves in and people come round with like a basket of muffins, be like, "Welcome to the neighbourhood."
And you'd be like,
and you're looking at them like,
"Are
you the watcher?"
Well, not exactly, but that sort of thing happened. I'll get into it in a second, but they met some of their neighbours at like barbecues and things like that, and they had this thing going on. They hadn't told anyone, and they were just spent the whole time anxiously trying to stare at people to see if anyone was like giving off a weird vibe or like watching them weirdly.
I bet you would, wouldn't you?
They were making sure their kids were close, or they were constantly screaming after their kids to not go and play in the pool with the other kids, all that sort of stuff. Jesus. So they're like constantly on edge within the first week or so. After, which is fair enough, because I'd be a wreck. So at this point, they still haven't moved in, and they've just got contractors around there, or workers, and the contractors started noticing things around the house, like signs that were in the front lawn, like for sale signs or sold signs. Every day they'd get there and it had been torn out of the ground and like thrown over the lawn. Tools went missing. So it was just weird things happening around the house. And obviously this was making the couple even more nervous whenever they were around there, whenever they were doing bits and pieces, painting or checking up on the contractors, all that sort of stuff. So this continued for a couple of weeks, and then 2 weeks after the first letter, Maria, the wife, was at the house and she was testing paint samples. Checked the letterbox and she found a second letter, again in the same like heavy black lettering. And the second one said, "Welcome again to your new home at 657 Boulevard. The workers have been busy, and I have been watching you unload carfuls of your personal belongings. Have they found what is in the walls yet? In time they will." The letter also listed the names of the couple, as well as the ages and the names of their 3 children. That's not listed in this thing. I think that's probably still private. So it lists the name and the ages of the 3 children. And then it continues, "I am pleased to know your names now and the names of the young blood you have brought to me."
Jesus.
It also made a direct reference to one of the children. The watcher stated, "The child I saw painting in the porch, is she the artist in the family?" So this was referencing, I said about a wraparound porch on the colonial style house. One of the kids had been painting. She had like an easel set up, and she was painting out on this porch. But the porch was at the back of the house, so there's no way no one on the street could see her. It wasn't in direct view of the street. Wasn't easy to see. They're quite big lots. There's pictures online, but it's like a classic American, like a film from the early 2000s or the 90s. American houses always seem to be massive.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, when we were talking about what a colonial house is, I quickly Googled it, and I guess just as like so the listeners can paint like a mental image, it's those big houses in America that are like very symmetrical, it looks like, with like the door in the middle and then 2 or 3 like sets of windows either side of that. The kind of house that you see in like Django and or if you've played like Red Dead Redemption, like those big sort of old style like slave owner houses, basically. Like, you know, from colonial times, anyone who had money back then, you'd have your own, you know, good bit of land, and then this sort of like symmetrical, as a big sort of like square house, really.
American flag hanging on the door.
I'll get the photos of the actual house because they are online.
Okay.
So I will find the pictures of the actual house and we'll have them up on the screen now on the YouTube page. So if you want to look at the actual house, you can either Google 657 Boulevard, and there's pictures of the interior as well as the outside. I mean, there's nothing.
Oh, their one's not actually that symmetrical.
But yeah, or we'll have it on the YouTube thing. Yes, it's not like a. I guess maybe it's different depending on what part of the US you're in.
Yeah.
Because I know in the South, you know, what you were saying, the Django houses with the big columns and all that sort of shit, that's the South. But maybe in the North, it's a slightly different style. Yeah. I'm not too sure.
Yeah, nice looking house though. But yeah, and like you say, you know, not what we're used to, where their neighbours are, you know, quite far away from you. You're not attached. Whereas, you know, in the UK, more likely to have closer neighbours.
Yeah, so there's like a big patch of garden between this house and, you know, any neighbours, all that sort of stuff. And bear in mind, it's on this boulevard, so all the houses either side are really big as well. So equally, they've got big gardens. It's quite a well-to-do area, upper middle class area, you know, all that sort of stuff. Anyway, so yeah, I was talking about the letter talking about one of the children on the porch. The porch wasn't in plain view of the road; it was at the back of the house. So again, that was cause for concern. They were thinking, how the hell is this person seen, our daughter painting on the porch? Whatever. The letter continued.
Oh, sorry.
Someone's fan video.
Yeah, my
classic
bad.
Rob Oliver.
I was scrolling down and I didn't realise it played at the top.
So the letter continues. 657 Boulevard is anxious for you to move in. It has been years and years since the young blood ruled the hallways of the house. Have you found all of the secrets that it holds yet? Will the young blood play in the basement, or are they too afraid to go down there alone?
Oh, fucking hell.
I would be very afraid if I were them. It is very far away from the rest of the house, and if you were upstairs, you would never hear them scream. I mean, that's just pretty sinister. It's starting to get a bit more sinister.
Yeah, the first ones, it's like, it's creepy, but there's nothing like, it seems like there's no intention behind it. There is no sinisterness other than the phrase young blood, which is fucking creepy.
Yeah.
But yeah, now it's getting to the point where it's
getting a bit weird. Yeah. The letter continues. Will they sleep in the attic, or will you all sleep on the second floor? Who has the bedrooms facing the street? I'll know as soon as you move in. It will help me to know who is in which bedroom, because then I can plan better.
Ooh,
Jesus.
Plan.
All of the windows and doors in 657 Boulevard allow me to watch you and track you as you move through the house. Who am I? I am the Watcher,
Jesus.
and have been in control of 657 Boulevard for the better part of 2 decades now. The Woods family turned it over to you. It was their time to move on, and they kindly sold it when I asked them to. I pass by many times a day. 657 Boulevard is my job, my life, my obsession. And now you are too, Brothers family. Welcome to the product of your greed. Greed is what brought the past 3 families to 657 Boulevard, and now it has brought you to me. Have a happy moving in day. You know I'll be watching. The Watcher.
That's mad.
Obviously, definitely freak you out.
Yeah.
I've never bought a house. I don't know at this point. I guess this is about 3 weeks, maybe a month after they've bought the house. What can you do in this situation? You're sort of stuck, right? You
can't you just sell it straight away again? Like, can't you just buy a house and sell it straight on?
Even then, it takes time to buy and sell a house, doesn't it? Like even the quickest turnaround on a house, you're talking a few months.
No, just sell it for.
Yeah.
I would be willing to take a loss on that. You buy it for 1.3, sell it for 1.2, buy a smaller house.
Yeah, even if you do, you say I'm selling it now.
Yeah.
A couple of months minimum before it's sold.
Just Airbnb, like in between, with rent a place. Fuck it, get a loan.
Mortgage was like on.
Yeah, sleep in the car, man. Drive to another state, sleep in the car until you sold that house.
Yeah,
get another one.
Well, luckily for this family, Maria, the mum, had grown up in Westfield. So she'd grown up in a neighbourhood only a couple of streets away from this house where this was all going on. So all while this was going on, the couple moved out of their old house. Obviously, they'd sold that. That all went through. But they moved into her parents' house rather than move into the new house. So they were all living close to the house, but they refused to move in, which again is understandable. So after this second letter arrived, the couple stopped bringing their children to the house. And they stopped going to the house, really. The only people that were around there were the contractors. But then that finished, and then they just didn't go around there, really.
When was this, by the way?
This was in 2014.
Okay, it's not even that long ago. Fuck.
Wow, yeah.
So they bought the house in June 2014. Sorry if I didn't mention that at the start. So June 2014. You might have done. Which isn't that long ago. So a couple more weeks went by, and then a third letter arrived, and all that was written on the third letter was, "Where have you gone? 657 Boulevard is missing you." Obviously, they hadn't really been there, so it was the Watcher's way of trying to get them to come back.
But he still put it in the mailbox for 657.
Yeah.
That'd have been mad if it followed them to their other home.
Oh yeah, it'd be mental. Yeah, so nothing ever happened at the other house. It was all just at this 657 Boulevard. So the police and the family suspected that the Watcher may have been a buyer who lost out on the home because
I was going to say that as almost as a joke. Like it's a good ploy to get someone to fucking.
Because it was a really desirable location. You know, the Boulevard was sort of a place to be.
Mate, that's a deep tactic if you did that just to make someone move out and buy it.
I mean, it probably happens. Yeah. Surely it must happen.
Fuck,
so one resident on the Boulevard, after all this news broke, they said that a neighbour had lost in a bidding war by over $300,000 on a house on the Boulevard. So people just go in at crazy prices to secure houses, you know, just like outbidding people by $300,000 is the norm on the Boulevard. So if someone really wanted the house, you know, they might feel hard done by that they didn't have it. Apparently, the 367 Boulevard or the house was one of the biggest and one of the nicest houses on the street as well. So again, potentially there's an element of jealousy in it. And in one of his later letters, or her later letters, the
657. You mean you confused me there?
What did I say?
367.
Sorry, 657.
Okay,
yeah. In one of the later letters,
I thought you just randomly saying it's other house, by the way. It's the best one, like
a couple hundred down the road.
Yeah.
The Watcher said in one of the later letters, the Boulevard used to be the street to live on. You made it if you lived it on the Boulevard. So again, the police started to suspect that potentially this person is either a buyer that has lost out, or maybe it's an old family that have lived in and around the Boulevard or in Westfield that for some reason has got a grudge against new people moving in, you know, stuff like that. So with this information, they spoke to the Woods family, and they said that there was only other two buyers on the house. One pulled out for medical reasons, and the other one pulled out because they found another home. So it ruled out the possibility of it being, buyers that were griefing. However, the police said it indicates proximity because the letters were processed in northern New Jersey, which was close to where Westfield is. And the first letter was postmarked June the 4th, which was before the sale went public. So again, it made the whole buyer theory a little bit less viable.
Seems a bit more personal as well.
Yeah. So Detective Lugo, who was the guy that they first went to at the police, then came around and examined the house.
Does that mean, by the way, so the first letter, it didn't have anything to do with, didn't mention them by name, it was just whoever, he put it in the letterbox, whichever cunt moves in here, I'm going to fuck with you. Like
pretty much.
Yeah.
Okay. But that was before the sale, so that was before they even knew that the house had been sold.
Yeah, so it wasn't specific to the Broaduses at that time, the first letter.
But what it does mean is that whoever wrote it knew that the house had been sold. So if they were watching, or they had some sort of insider bit of information, So the detective came round and had a proper look at the house. The back garden was semi-private, so there was a house at the back that sort of overlooked it, but not really too much. And the porch, again, I mentioned about the porch with the easel, was hidden from the street, so the watcher had to have either been in the garden or right next door in one of the adjoining gardens. At the same time, the family went to a barbecue, which again I mentioned earlier. And at this barbecue, they obviously felt really, really anxious. It was like a neighbour barbecue, and I think it was 2 doors down. And the host, who was a guy called John Schmidt, mentioned in passing whether the family had met the Langfords, who were the family in between this John Schmidt and the Broaders house. The reason why is because he said that the Langfords were a very unusual family, a very old family. They've been there for a long time. Peggy Langford was the matriarch. She was 90 years old. She lived at the house with several of her adult children who were all in their 60s.
That's
and
weird,
the family were described as being odd by John Schmidt.
Well, it's already odd.
Done. Solved.
Yeah.
So straight away they were like, huh, okay. Let's go and have a little chat with the Langfords. So they were convinced that it was this Langford family that were causing the problem, or the Broaderses were convinced, I should say. It was right next to the house, to their house. It had a sort of a view onto the porch with the easel. The family had been there since the 60s, which again tied into when the watcher said his family started obviously observing the house and being the watcher for the family, watcher for 657 Boulevard. The dad of the Langfords had died 12 years earlier, and the current watcher had stated to have been on the job for the better part of 2 decades. Mm-hmm. So at this point, Derek's thinking, it's all sort of tying together. This is sounding like this bunch of nutters next door are the watcher. However, when Michael Langford, who was the son specifically mentioned by Schmidt, was brought in for questioning, he denied knowing anything about letters, and the police had no further evidence. There was no DNA evidence, there was no physical evidence, so they couldn't really do anything with him. They did sort of tail him, and they opened an investigation following him around, but eventually they just had to stop because legally they couldn't charge him with anything, and they couldn't just keep him under surveillance. So obviously Derek was frustrated with this, and he began obsessively sitting up all night inside the house with all the lights turned off, hoping to see if he could catch a glimpse of the watcher outside the house. Maybe he'd see someone come into the garden, or see a flashlight, or people peering in the window, something like that.
You'd be so on it, wouldn't you?
Yeah. I'd just be on high alert all the time. Be terrible. But they haven't moved in at this point, so he's going around there and getting in unseen, and he's staying there all night, just up, looking out the windows, hoping to see a glimpse of someone. Didn't see anything. He purchased CCTV systems, and then he began trying to gather as much information about the house itself and the neighbourhood as he could. They hired a private investigator as well, and the private investigator ran background checks on everyone in the neighbourhood, all of the families, all of the companies, everything in the neighbourhood. And he staked it out as well.
It's mad how you can do that in America, isn't it? Can we do that in England? Just hire a private investigator?
I think you can.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can.
Anyway.
Which is mad.
I remember looking into it when I was like a teenager, being like, I so want to be a private investigator. I was like, I'd be so good at that. And then I realised that there's probably a good amount of confrontation involved when people find out you've been investigating them.
Yeah.
Tom McLeod investigates. Where was I?
They hired
he obviously staked out the neighbourhood, the Boulevard, and the letters themselves were examined. So they did criminal analysis of the letters, and they determined from it that the writer was female and of an older age. The reason for them saying that it was, or they deciding or theorising that the writer was female, is because of the sentence structure, the salutations, the language used, and the lack of direct threats pointed it to be, or pointed towards it being a female rather than a male. I guess from their criminal analysis, a male's likely to be more directly threatening, threatening you with death or, stuff like that. And then some of the language that the watcher used was a bit more eloquent than you would normally maybe see in a letter or a stalking letter, something like that. So Again, they thought, okay, maybe it's an older person. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So a further letter also supported this. So a few weeks later, another letter arrived. Again, the Broaders family hadn't moved in, so this letter says, "The house is crying from all of the pain it is going through. You have changed it and made it so fancy. You are stealing its history, and it cries for the past and what it used to be in the time when I roamed its halls. The 1960s were a good time for 657 Boulevard, when I ran from room to room, imagining the life with the rich occupants there. The house was full of life and young blood. Then it got old, and so did my father, but he kept watching until the day he died. And now I watch and wait for the day when the young blood will be mine again."
So weird, man.
It's just bizarre. It's strange language, isn't it? It's just weird language to use.
Imagine if it was that, like, your dad did do this thing and then was like, "Now you must also watch the house, son."
Yeah.
Like, what a fucked up... He's got no chance, has he?
It's bizarre.
You genuinely think, well, this is normal. Like, I have obviously... My dad always did it. He watched the house. This is just what I do next. And I send these fucked up letters because it's just normal. It's just, maybe he just thinks he's being friendly.
In his own weird way.
Yeah.
Just unsettling. I mean, you just wouldn't want to be in there at all. I wouldn't want to be in there, even just like renovating it or anything.
No, I wonder if they had a gun, especially in America. Like,
oh yeah,
I'd have all the guns.
Yeah, I'd have a gun if I was them. That's a pretty fair use for having a gun.
Yeah.
Doesn't actually mention anything about him having a gun at all in this, Derek. You know, from everything I've read, I read a few different articles, and there was no mention that he purchased a gun. And that would have been the first thing that I did, especially in America.
Well, I've already had one.
Or maybe it was more of a liberal state. Guns aren't legal in all states, are they?
It is actually, because I went onto Google Maps to see. I just wanted to see the house and see like the houses surrounding it, and I don't know who lives in the house now, but whoever lived in there 2020 did vote for Joe Biden because they've got those big placards outside, and so have the people across the road. So
Joe Biden.
But I think a lot of people will still have a gun.
I reckon so, yeah.
Especially if you were getting those letters, that might change your stance on whether you're pro gun or not.
I'd buy a tank. To have a tank in the front garden. So the Langfords continue to be suspects, especially in the eyes of Derek and his family. However, the police continue to be convinced that they were innocent. Their reason being that the fact that the Watchers sent 2 further letters after Michael had been questioned, they said was an extremely reckless move on his part if he was the Watcher, which I guess is fair enough. You know, it's sort of in plain sight. It's very, very obvious if it is him to continue doing it. But I don't know, maybe he's just wrong in the head. He's not really thinking that way. Yeah. But anyway, so he wasn't really investigated any further. So by the end of 2014, so we're getting over 6-7 months in now at this point. The investigation stalled, completely stopped pretty much. The police had stopped investigating the events. The family had fully decided against moving into the home, and they finished the renovations. They were already halfway through, so they just got those done. And then just before Christmas, a 4th letter arrived in the mailbox. 657 Boulevard is turning on me. It is coming after me, and I don't understand why. What spell did you cast upon it? It used to be my friend, and now it is my enemy. I am in charge of 657 Boulevard. It is not in charge of me. I will fend off its bad things, and I will wait for it to become good again. It will not punish me, and I will rise again. I will be patient and wait for this to pass, and for you to bring me the young blood once again. 657 Boulevard needs young blood. It needs you. Come back. Let the young blood play again like I once did. Let the young blood sleep in 657 Boulevard. Stop changing it and leave it alone. So it seems to be appealing to them to stop the renovations. At this point, the renovations were more or less done. So they were like, well, we're not going to stop, just whatever, done.
Yeah.
And after this 4th letter arrived, they decided we can't move in. We just can't face moving in. So they decided to try and sell it. And this was only 6 months after purchasing the house. So they listed it at a slightly higher price than their purchase price because they renovated it.
Good luck.
They hope to just sell it quickly. You know, he just wanted it out.
Surely you can't sell it and like not mention that, right? Like, there's
Yeah, well,
I'm pretty sure
we'll get into that.
We spoke about a case very similar to this on the podcast before. I don't even know if it. I'm starting to think it might have been the same one, but
Maybe
we just didn't go into any detail.
Yeah, maybe we did.
But
briefly,
there was another story where someone was getting letters, and like they'd just bought a house and they were getting these letters saying about being watched. It must have been the same one.
It must be the same one. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was like the first episode that I was on.
I think because we might have been talking about getting sued in America. Like everyone loves to sue.
Yeah, but yeah, we definitely didn't go into detail on it. Like you were just doing it from memory and spent like 5 minutes on it. But yeah, I remember there's something about whether like you have to, if something like that's going on and you're trying to sell it, you have to declare that. Yeah, and so surely they can't.
Like, do you have to? You get some houses where it's like someone was murdered in. Like, do you have to say that?
I don't think so, because people have been killed in so many houses, and people have like,
especially in America,
died in so many houses.
Yeah.
That like,
there's this classic story. I don't know whether it's one of those things that people just say, or whether it's true or not. But supposedly there was like there's a woman and a husband, and they buy a house, and then the husband cheats on the woman, and so she knows she's gonna have to move out or something, right? So before she does, she gets like fish guts or something, right? She knows he like goes out. Maybe they've like, you know, they've split up, had a massive argument. She's moved out, but then like one day she knows when he's out. She still has a key. She goes around. She gets like these fish guts, goes to the fucking curtain railings, unscrews them, puts them fucking in, screws them back in, right? And that's that. And then, or in another version of the story, maybe it's like she undoes the plug sockets, puts it in there or something, you know. And then he's, you know, so obviously they're like, we need to sell the, you know, they're selling the house. Everyone comes around and views his house, and it fucking stinks, you know, like, and he's going, pulling his hair out, trying to sort of get people around to, what's this smell? You know, trying to get his professional cleaners around, everything, can't get rid of the fucking smell, so they can't fucking sell it. And so eventually he has to drop the price. No fucking wants to buy it. Eventually he drops the price so low, she goes, you know what? I always liked the house, had some good times in the house. She fucking buys the house, goes in, takes the curtain rails out, gets rid of the fish guts, bang.
That'd be good.
Love it.
You just get a dog in there, wouldn't you? Dog will sniff that shit right out.
Sniff a dog or something, yeah.
Some kind of animal.
How big's your dog to be sniffing the curtain?
Well, it would get to that area. It would narrow it down a bit.
Yeah, true. I suppose so.
It's a good story either way, isn't it?
That is a good, I hope that's true.
Yeah, I really hope that's true. Yeah, it's fucking great if it's true.
Yeah, it'd be great. But yes, I think maybe you are right. We might have mentioned this in passing in one of the other episodes.
Yeah.
Probably because we laughed at how people in America love to sue each other.
Yeah.
I know. I seem to remember Rob and I laughing about that together.
Yeah, they do.
But yeah. So anyway, get back to the story. So, I don't want to go on and on.
Yeah, let's go
about the Watcher. Where was I?
I'm into it.
Yeah. So they were trying to sell the house.
Yeah.
Obviously, they listed it for just slightly over the 1.3 million that they bought it for. I haven't got the exact number, but it wasn't like a huge amount over. But they couldn't find anyone to buy it. Rumours had started to spread, even though they hadn't told anyone about these letters. The local community had somehow got wind of it. So prospective buyers,
the police had told someone or something, and
it must have just come from the police, or
and all like the contractors that work there, and the private investigator.
So somehow or another, the local community began to find out about these letters, and then the buyers were also scared off. So the one thing the family did decide to do, they were asked later on why they chose to disclose the fact that these letters were coming through to all the buyers, and they said, we know what it's like to have happened to us, so we just couldn't face knowing that we were doing the same thing to someone else. Which, you know,
assuming that if they sold the house, the Watcher would crack on with the next people, I guess.
Yeah. So they, in one mind, you know, they wanted to get out, but they couldn't face the fact that the next person would unknowingly just be stuck in the same situation.
Yeah.
So they made a point.
Them, really.
Yeah, they made a point of making the letters available to whoever came to buy the house. It mentioned about like solicitors and lawyers. So I guess these people were so wealthy, obviously there's a lot of money trading hands. So when people view a house, maybe they'd have their lawyer look over the plans or like the deeds and that sort of shit, because it mentioned that a lot of the time they'd have a sit down with the buyer's lawyers, and at that point they'd look at the letters and the lawyer would be like, either we're going to offer you $500,000 less than the asking price, or we're not going to buy it, that sort of stuff. So eventually, like I said, they got a few offers that was like substantially lower, but they just couldn't afford to accept them. All their money was tied up in the house. They couldn't take $500K for the house, even if they wanted to. Yeah. So they were just forced to take it off the market and just keep it. On June 2nd, 2015, a full year after they bought the house, so they've just been sitting on it. They can't really do anything. This is where we might have talked about it before. The Broadus family, or the Broadus couple, opened legal proceedings against the Woods family, so the couple that sold them the house, stating that they had failed to disclose the presence and content of the threatening letters. They're saying that the Woods family had received a letter before they moved in. They didn't let them know about it, so they were demanding money from them. Yeah. It doesn't say exactly how much they were sort of asking for, but they were looking to recoup some of the money that they would have to lose by selling the house at a lower price, I guess. So at this point, because they'd put a legal challenge in, it became public. So as soon as you lodge a legal complaint, the media can see that. Yep. So the media found out about this story, and then it went a bit viral in the US. I don't remember at the time reading about this. I only read about this a couple of years after. So I don't know if it made it over to the UK when this was all going on. Maybe it did. But yes, they started trying to interview the Broadus family. But they just weren't interested. They just wanted to try and get rid of the lawsuit, get it all done, get the house out of their lives and just move on. And it had started to have an effect in the local community as well. So residents became scared of their neighbours. People didn't want to walk up and down the boulevard where the house was. And sales of home surveillance equipment went up dramatically in Westfield. And the local mayor also stated that the watcher hadn't been heard from in over a year and that the police search had been exhaustive. So he was trying to do damage limitation, I guess.
Was the watcher someone that wanted the house but also owned a CCTV company? And was just a real, had smart foresight,
real long
motherfucker.
Yeah.
So at this point, the police decided to investigate the sister of Michael Langford, the initial suspect. However, they got some DNA off a bottle that she'd been using, tested it against the letters, because some DNA had been found on one of the letters that was female DNA. And she wasn't a match. So again, they ruled her out. And at this point, the police said categorically the Langfords are not suspects in this case. So the weird family next door, they're not the watcher. So at this point, conspiracy theories started to come up in the media and the local sort of community.
Just quickly, aren't the Langfords the name of like the weird family in Ozark? Isn't the Langfords?
I think that's
the hillbilly family.
Oh yeah, they're the Langfords, aren't they?
I thought Langfords were the main characters.
Oh, really? Is it Marty? His first name, isn't it? Marty.
His name is Marty. Yeah, Marty Bird.
The Birds.
The Langfords, I think you're right, are the blonde girl.
The hillbillies.
The hillbilly ones, the Langfords, I think.
What a great series, by the way.
Oh, fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Anyway,
new season soon, I think.
Hopefully, yeah.
This year, next year. Anyway, yeah, so the Langfords is a good name for a hillbilly.
It sounds,
family,
yeah,
Langford.
it is, yeah.
Go up to Langford property up on
yeah.
up on Broken Hill Ridge.
Yeah.
So they were ruled out, however. So the Langfords were like, no, it's not them, whatever. Like I say, some conspiracy theories started to circulate. Maybe the Broadus family had got in too deep. They'd taken on this mortgage that they couldn't afford, so they were trying to get out quick. People looked into their records.
People trying to say it was a long con from them. The whole thing
potentially, potentially. So they had gone from having a $117,000 house to a $350,000 house to a $1.3 million house in in the span of like 5 years or something.
What do you mean by explain that?
So they'd had two houses before this.
Oh, right.
So
Okay.
it's basically a
Sorry.
big jump from their last house. Like
Yeah,
an
so
extra
people were
million.
saying,
Yeah.
I mean, they've gone from I think it was $380,000 to 1.3 million.
Yeah.
Might have made some money. Bitcoin.
Yeah, the dad had a good job. He was like an executive at some data firm or something. So this was just one of the theories. People like to chuck a theory in.
Yeah.
Also, insurance fraud potentially was that they were saying they just fraudsters. Are they the Marty Birds of this scenario? Are they money laundering, stuff like that? But there was no evidence to suggest this. But it didn't stop the rumours. And it's just continued on for the next sort of year. No word from the Watcher. No more letters. The lawsuit looked less and less likely to succeed. In fact, it did eventually fail. And by 2016, mid-2016, the Broaduses relisted the home in the hopes of selling and moving on. But once again, all potential buyers were spooked as soon as they were told about the letters. So eventually they realised that they're not going to get a single person or a family to agree to buy it, or that it's going to be difficult. So they came up with the idea of selling the plot to a developer who would then turn it into two separate properties. So obviously they wouldn't have any qualms with tearing the house down and then building two properties, whatever. They're not handing it on to anyone. They're not meeting the people that they're handing it on to. They just felt a bit better about that. What this would involve, though, would be applying for it through the local planning organisation or the planning authority, which was like a local group that just said yes or no to any developments, like extensions, all that sort of bullshit. So this type of development had become popular in the town, or common on the Boulevard, and being one of the largest lots, the property would have been well within the planning board's size limits. So each plot had to still be a certain size to be accepted. But given the size of the plot, it would have been fine. When they submitted the proposal, local reaction was mixed. Some people were supporting them. They were sympathetic. Other people were really against it. In January 2017, so at this point, it's 3 years since they bought the house. January 2017, the planning board met, and over 100 residents turned up to petition against the proposal. After a few hours of deliberation, the proposal was denied on the grounds that it was too narrow, despite smaller and narrower plots being present on the Boulevard. So again, this is another conspiracy theory saying, is the town being paid off? Is it some sort of local conspiracy? Is it some sort of vendetta against the family? Bear in mind the wife, Maria, had grown up in the town. She was a local.
Yeah.
So she appealed to the locals saying, I'm one of you. What is going on? Why am I being sort of victimized and all that sort of stuff? But all that came of it really is that the couple lost a further $100,000 in planning proposals and tax. And obviously they lost the proposal. And then several days later, the last letter arrived from the Watcher, who had at this point not been heard from in over 2 years. So this letter is a little bit different to the last ones. Seems like they'd maybe had a beer or two, They might have had a 6% beer. Violent winds and bitter cold. That's how it starts. To the vile and spiteful Derek and his wench of a wife, Maria. This was dated February 13th, which was the day they gave statements in their last statements in their lawsuit against the Woods family. So again, the Watcher was obviously keeping tabs on it. So to the vile, spiteful Derek and his wench of a wife, Maria. You wonder who the Watcher is. Turn around, idiots. Maybe you even spoke to me, one of the so-called neighbours who has no idea who the Watcher could be. Or maybe you do know and are too scared to tell anyone. Good move. I walked by the news trucks when they took over my neighbourhood and they mocked me. I watched you as you watched from the dark house in an attempt to find me. Telescopes and binoculars are wonderful inventions. It's terrifying, isn't it?
Yeah, that's fucking shit.
657 Boulevard survived your attempted assault and stood strong with its army of supporters barricading its gates. My soldiers of the Boulevard followed my rules to a T. They carried out their mission and saved the soul of 657 Boulevard, alongside my orders. All hail the Watcher.
What?
The renter, so they tried to rent out the house as well. I didn't mention this, but in this letter, the renter was mentioned by name.
Oh.
The renter got spooked, but agreed to stay if the Broaduses had installed cameras around the house. But this letter sort of finally scared him off because it indicated that revenge could come in many forms. So it was almost a direct threat against this renter, saying maybe a car accident, maybe a fire, maybe something as simple as a mild illness that never seems to go away, but it makes you feel sick day after day, after day.
Fucking hell.
Maybe the mysterious death of a pet. Loved ones suddenly die.
What?
Planes and cars and bicycles crash. Bones break. You are despised by the house, and the Watcher won.
That's mad.
And that was it. So that was the last.
I'd have turned the house into like one of those horror houses. Like, you pay this much, and you get. Can you stay here overnight? Bet you can't. And someone.
Can you check the letterbox? Bet you can't.
Yeah, group of mates. They all pay like £100 each or something, and they stay there for a night or two. You come and bang on the window, run away. They all get freaked out. They're like, "Whoa, mental." That'd be good. I'll do that.
I mean, the scariest thing about that is definitely the bit where it says, "I watched you as you watched to see if you could see me out of the dark house."
Yeah, that's fucked that bit, especially all them years later to only just say that then. Like, yeah, remember that. I remember that.
Telescopes and binoculars are a wonderful invention, so it implies that he's like watching from afar away, or she, the Watcher, is watching from afar away. So maybe not even like on that street, but if the street over has like a good line of sight to the windows and the telescope, like that's mad. Even just looking, really. Someone's sitting in a dark house, all the lights off, and you can see them through a telescope or binoculars. That's crazy.
Yeah, that is mad. Or maybe they saw them go in.
Yeah, they just knew they was in the house.
Saw the lights stay off and just knew that must be what they were doing. Good deduction. Still, either way, it's fucking horrible.
Terrifying.
Yeah, and that's it. What? And that's that.
So the family never moved in, and obviously they had this lawsuit going on for a few years, and they were trying to sell it for a few years. There was an additional little bit that I won't really go into, but at some point, I think in sort of 2017, 2018, towards the end of 2017, some anonymous letters started appearing in neighbours' mailboxes from addressed, or they were not from the Watcher, but they said they were from friends of the Broadus family. And they were basically slandering their neighbours for not coming to the Broadus family's aid. Trying to sort of drum up support for the family, I guess. And eventually it came to light that Derek had been writing these letters. Potentially he'd got to a point where he was desperate, he didn't really know what to do. He was trying to just think of any means to try and figure out who this was. So he started writing anonymous letters, almost like imploring his neighbours to
help him out
come forward. Yeah. But it went on and on. The last thing that I can find, there was no mention of any other letters. The family sold the house in September 2019. They finally sold it. And since then, there's been no mention of a Watcher. There's been no mention of any letters.
Does it say how much they sold it for?
I couldn't find it. It says that it was sold to a private owner an undisclosed amount. I did find a realtor website.
Yeah, I found that a second ago.
I don't know if it's got prices on it for when it was last sold.
No, it doesn't on it. The one I'm looking at.
But so from June 2014.
Well, they wanted $1 million for it in the thing that was listed in 2019 March. It was up for $1 million.
Potentially, around that.
Yeah.
Obviously they've lost money on it, whatever, because of all the lawsuit and all the other bullshit. They've been living somewhere else. For how many years is that? June 2014 to September 2019. 3.5 years?
5.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
4, 5, 6. Yeah, 5. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy.
That's crazy.
So it was finally sold in 2019, and like Tom says, the current owner supports Joe Biden. So maybe the Watcher was Joe Biden. And he's now out in the open. I'm not too sure. But so it's a story that doesn't sound like it's real. It sounds like something you'd read online and be like, yeah, whatever, bullshit. And then at the end, there'll be some stupid twist, like the whole time the person was living in the wall or something like that. Obviously, nothing like that. But it is all true. It did all happen. Whether it was the Broaders family that were making it up to pull some sort of scam, or whether it was like a neighbourhood watch gone insane.
So nothing ever found in the walls then, or anything like that.
Nothing was ever found in the walls.
Because the initial letter, one of the initial ones said that the contractors would find something in the walls.
Yeah.
Yeah. But nothing was ever found in the house. Whether there still is something in the house, who knows? Maybe in the future there might be some more developments. But I've always found it a weird little story. I think it's got the makings of a good film. I can see it as like a good psychological horror
I like
film.
it because it's modern as well. Like like you said at the beginning, a lot of the time you'll hear these similar stories and they're from 1949 or something.
Yeah, I kind of thought it would be,
even longer. It'll be from like the 1800s. And but the fact is, like, 2014. Like, wow, they had like Priuses and stuff then.
Yeah.
And the fact that
Bitcoin was already $1,000.
Yeah, Bitcoin. Maybe it was your mate.
That's mad, though, isn't it?
They were ordering the letters off of the dark web.
I mean, yeah, that's mad. I mean, the fact that you can't pull DNA from the letters. I suppose if the DNA is not in the database, you can't match it to anyone.
You could get some DNA, but what is it? It's like people think it's straightforward, like getting you might get fingerprints of something, but if the police ain't got your fingerprints, it's just whatever, like just any old set of fingerprints.
All I know is that if I started getting letters like that, I would fill my pants immediately.
Yep.
I mean, it's just terrifying.
But you can see that they had trouble selling it, like you say, so they did try and sell it. They tried to get the fuck out of there and just...
Yeah. I mean, from what I've read, they considered, if they could, they'd take like a 500k loss. But they just couldn't.
Well, I wonder what they sold it for eventually. Well, if it was up for $1 million and they bought it for 1.3 and they did renovation on it, they must,
Yeah,
that's saying it sold for $1 million. It might not have.
They've lost a few, maybe $300,000-400,000. Well, at least $300,000 on the house, plus $100,000 on the lawsuit, and then all the money they've spent on the mortgage.
Yeah.
So if it is like an insurance scam, it's gone wrong.
Not a good one.
It's not a very good one. Yeah. I mean, at the best, it's some cunt that then eventually bought it for a massive loss. Like,
that was a long
it should have been
play.
Like, it's a real long play. Especially considering it took like 5 years. It probably eventually thought, fucking hell, I fucked up here and I lads. Like, I really thought they'd get out after a couple of months and I'd swoop it. I thought they'd drop it and I'd swoop in.
Yeah.
Well, I like that.
That's it. That is the Westfield Watcher.
That's mad, man.
Obviously, if there's any updates, I don't think there will be, then I will let you know. But as of now, the Watcher remains a mystery. No one knows who the Watcher was.
Mental.
Maybe let us know your thoughts. If anyone has read about this already and they've got a theory, or if I missed anything, let me know. Because there's a few other bits of the story that aren't as important, sort of like filler.
Yeah.
So I probably recommend anyone, if you want to read more about it, there's a few good videos on YouTube, or there is a good article from The Cut, which goes through the whole thing.
I think that's like the first one that comes up when you type in the just the address. If you type in 657 Boulevard, Westfield, the first thing is The Cut.
So
the haunting
like
of 657 Boulevard.
The longest. Yeah, so I mean, that says it's the haunting. I don't think there's any suggestion at any point that it's, a ghost or anything like that. That would be another...
No.
You know how I feel about ghosts. I'd love it, but I don't think it is a ghost. But yeah, so that Cut article is, at the time of writing, is like the definitive walkthrough of the case.
And there's this photo that keeps popping up, which is a photo of the house, but it looks like it's like an actual printed photo, and there's like a some kind of weird marking to it. Like there's a red
weird,
rectangle.
What's going on with that?
Yeah. A weird sort of like...
inside the house? I know, yeah.
No, it's at the outside. I don't know what they're trying to show,
Yeah.
It's probably just made to look like it, I guess. I
think it's popped up like multiple times. like it's
Weird.
significant, but maybe.
Hmm.
Or maybe I'm not actually. I think it is just that article was stylized it like that. Yeah,
There you go. That was good, George.
Yeah. Glad you
it was
enjoyed
good. Yeah,
it.
Freaked me out a little bit, to be honest with you.
Oh, yeah.
let us know your thoughts.
Check your letterboxes.
Yeah.
If you've got any
We
ideas,
should set up a Curios Cast PO box. shouldn't we?
maybe in the future. But yeah,
So our listeners
if,
can send us scary letters.
and if you're the watcher and
PO box.
you want another house to watch, Rob's address is. You'd love it.
Fuck that. Yeah,
Maybe
well,
watch your van, Rob.
put letters through it, like slide it in the gaps because it's got loads of gaps in it.
Under the window wiper.
Fucking hell, well.
Yeah, so I hope you enjoyed it, everyone. Let me know, like I say, if you've got any theories or anything I've missed, or if you've got another mystery that you want me to talk about. Because, you know me, I'm big into my mysteries. If you've got another little spooky little story you want me to mention, email curioscast@gmail.com, or obviously message me on Instagram if you want it to stay a bit more secret, if the boys aren't supposed to know ahead of time.
Nice.
But yeah,
All right.
so have a good evening. Don't have nightmares, and we'll see you next week on the
Peace.
Curios Cast.
See you on the next one.
week.
Bye.